The dating advice I wish I had learned before it was too late. If I could go back in time, sit my younger self down, and give just one piece of advice about love, it would be this. Know your worth before you ask someone to see it. But back then, I didn't know any better. I was 24 when I met Sarah. She wasn't just beautiful, she was magnetic. The kind of person you couldn't help but be drawn to. She walked into a room like she belonged everywhere, like she had the world in the palm of her hand. And me? I was just lucky enough to be holding hers. Our first date felt like a scene from a movie. We sat at a rooftop cafe, city lights flickering in the background, as she told me stories about the places she wanted to visit. Paris, Tokyo, Santorini. She spoke with so much excitement, so much certainty, as if she had already been there in another life. I was mesmerized. By the time the check came, I already knew I would do anything to keep this girl in my life. And that was my first mistake. At first, everything was perfect, the kind of whirlwind romance people write songs about. She'd text me at midnight, asking me to meet her at a 24-hour diner just because she was craving pancakes. And I'd go. No hesitation. She'd call me in the middle of my workday, saying she was bored and wanted to go on an adventure. And I'd make up an excuse to leave early. I became the guy who would drop everything for her. And I thought that was love. But love, real love, doesn't feel like you're constantly trying to earn your place in someone's life. The first red flag came subtly, like a whisper in the wind. We had plans to go to a concert together. I had bought the tickets months in advance, front row, her favorite band. The day of, she texted me just an hour before. "Hey, I'm going with Jenna instead. Hope you don't mind." Just like that. I remember staring at my phone, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, unsure how to respond. My heart sank, but I told myself it wasn't a big deal. Maybe she just wanted a girls' night. Maybe I was overreacting. "No worries, have fun," I replied. But I did worry. Things started to change after that. She cancelled plans more often, always at the last minute, always with an excuse that didn't quite add up. One evening, I surprised her with takeout from her favorite Thai place, just because she had mentioned craving it the day before. But when I showed up at her apartment, she barely looked at the food. "Oh, I already ate," she said casually, scrolling through her phone. A pause, then she looked up at me and laughed. "You're so sweet, though. You always do the cutest things." Something about the way she said it, like I was a puppy trying too hard to please its owner, made my stomach turn. Still, I stayed, because every time she pulled away, she had a way of reeling me back in. She'd disappear for days, barely texting, only to show up at my door at midnight, saying she missed me. She'd tell me I was the best thing in her life, that no one understood her like I did. And I believed her. I ignored the sinking feeling in my chest every time she talked about some new guy from work with a little too much excitement. I ignored the way she rarely asked about my day, my dreams, my struggles. I ignored myself. Then came the dinner party. It was one of those fancy gatherings, the kind where people sipped wine and laughed like they belonged in a magazine. Sarah had invited me, and I had spent the whole day looking forward to it. But the second we arrived, it was like I didn't exist. She introduced me as a friend. She barely stood next to me, spending most of the night talking to a tall, well-dressed guy named Daniel. And then I heard it. A whispered joke, just loud enough for me to catch. "Oh, that's just Ben. He's harmless." Harmless, like I was a pet, like I wasn't someone she was in love with, just someone who was there. That night, I finally allowed myself to ask the question I had been avoiding for months. If I stopped trying, if I stopped chasing, would she even notice I was gone? 2 weeks later, she answered that question for me. She ended things over a 5-minute phone call. No big fight, no deep discussion, just a simple, "I don't think this is working." Like I was a summer fling. Like I hadn't spent 2 years giving her everything. I remember sitting in my car after the call, staring at my phone, waiting for some kind of follow-up message, some kind of regret. But none came, and suddenly I realized she had never been mine to lose. It took me a long time to unlearn the habits I had built in that relationship, the way I put others' needs before my own, the way I mistook effort for love, the way I ignored the gut feelings that whispered, "This isn't right." Looking back, I wish someone had sat me down and told me, love isn't about proving your worth, it's about being valued for who you are. If someone makes you feel like you're too much for wanting love and respect, they're not the right person for you. The right person won't make you feel like you have to chase them. They'll meet you halfway. I wish I had learned those lessons sooner, but maybe, just maybe, someone reading this will learn them now, before it's too late.